The three words echoed through the luxury lobby of the Regal Crown Hotel like a gunshot. Naomi froze, the damp cleaning cloth still trembling in her hands. It had been 6 years since anyone called her that. 6 years since she'd packed away her doctorate in a box and put on the gray uniform of a housekeeper. The man before her, $3,000 suit, perfectly trimmed beard, eyes that recognized what everyone else ignored, took a step forward. "You disappeared 10 years ago," he said softly, his voice heavy with emotion. "I searched for you at every university, every library, every conference. And now I find you, here." The hotel managers looked at each other, confused. How did this Arab billionaire know their invisible 12th floor housekeeper? What they didn't know was that Naomi Carter held a secret. She wasn't just an immigrant cleaning celebrity bathrooms. She was one of the most brilliant linguists the Library of Alexandria had ever seen. She spoke 6 languages. She deciphered manuscripts others deemed impossible. And a decade ago, she had saved the career of the man now standing before her. "You need to come back," Sheikh Omar al-Hadi said, completely ignoring the executives around him. "The world needs you. I need you." Then he asked the question that would change everything. "Why are you hiding who you really are?" Naomi opened her mouth to answer, but no sound came out. Because how do you explain that sometimes, to survive, you have to become invisible? How do you tell someone that you put away your books, erased your title, and accepted being treated like nothing because it was the only way to care for the person you loved? And now, for the first time in 6 years, someone was offering her the chance to become who she'd always been. But accepting meant confronting everything she'd buried. And the hotel where she worked wouldn't let their most valuable property leave without a fight. This is the story of a woman the world tried to erase, and how she reclaimed not just her voice, but her very existence. The digital alarm read for 30 a.m. when Naomi opened her eyes in the darkness. The sound of the subway rumbling deep beneath Newark made the windows vibrate slightly. Another day, same routine. She rose silently in the tiny Harlem apartment. Her grandmother, Miriam, still slept in the next room, the only family she had in the world. The 78-year-old woman who had crossed the Atlantic fleeing Nigerian dictatorship, who raised her daughter alone in a foreign country, and who later raised her granddaughter when the daughter died in childbirth. Naomi looked at herself in the foggy bathroom mirror. Dark brown skin, tired eyes at 33 years old, natural hair that she tied in a tight bun every day, not by aesthetic choice, but because the hotel's employee manual required that hair must be contained and professional. She put on the gray uniform, deliberately oversized, deliberately shapeless, deliberately designed to make women invisible. At 5:15 a.m., she was on the platform of the numbered subway line. Around her, dozens of other night workers, building security guards, nurses returning from shifts, janitors, housekeepers, the invisible army that kept Manhattan running while the city of dreams still slept. Naomi closed her eyes, but not from exhaustion, from memory. 10 years ago, she was someone else. Dr. Naomi Carter, not the housekeeper, but the academic, Fulbright scholar, expert in nearly extinct African languages. The young prodigy who at 23 was already presenting papers at Oxford, the Sorbonne, Cairo. She remembered the day she received the fellowship to work at the Library of Alexandria. The email arrived while she was at Columbia University's library, and she screamed with joy so loud she had to apologize to the other students. Alexandria, where 1,000-year-old manuscripts waited to be deciphered, where she spent 16 hours a day immersed in dead dialects, in ancient Swahili mixed with classical Arabic, in Berber languages that hadn't had speakers for centuries. That's where she met a desperate young student. His thesis was at risk because no one could translate a crucial set of 12th century documents, commercial texts that mixed for different languages, in ways no professional translator could decode. Naomi deciphered them in 3 weeks. That work became the foundation of the student's thesis. He graduated with highest distinction. He thanked her profoundly, said he would never forget what she'd done, And then Naomi disappeared from the academic world. The subway stopped abruptly, pulling her from memories. Times Square. She got off and walked the 3 blocks to the Regal Crown Hotel, a colossus of glass and marble on 57th Street, where one night in the presidential suite cost more than she earned in 3 months. Service entrance in the back, always in the back. In the basement locker room, she found Carmen, Dominican, 50 years old, 15 years at the hotel. 3 children raised on a housekeeper's salary. "Morning, girl," Carmen greeted while adjusting her own gray uniform. Ready for another day of being invisible. It was Carmen's recurring joke, but it wasn't really a joke. "As ready as I'll ever be," Naomi replied. Grace entered, Haitian, for children, 3 jobs. "Did you hear? Big VIP today. Arab billionaire. Management is losing their minds. When aren't they?" Yuki commented. The 60-year-old Japanese woman spoke little, but her eyes said everything. Naomi grabbed her cleaning cart, vacuum, chemicals, clean towels, trash bags, and headed to the service elevator. 12th floor, 15 rooms, 6 hours, 15 stories of people who would never know her name. At 9:47 a.m., Naomi was in room 1208, changing 1,000 thread count sheets when her radio crackled. "Naomi Carter, report to the main lobby immediately." It was Mrs. Peterson, the operations manager. In 6 years, she had spoken directly to Naomi exactly 4 times. "Copy that," Naomi responded, her heart inexplicably racing. She stored her materials, smoothed her uniform, and descended via the service elevator, because employees didn't use the main elevators. When the doors opened in the lobby, she saw the scene and immediately understood something was wrong. Mrs. Peterson was there. The general manager, Mr. Hartley, too, a man she only saw in corporate photos, 2 suited security guards, and a man she didn't immediately recognize. He had his back turned, looking at the enormous windows facing Fifth Avenue. Impeccable suit, the posture of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "There she is," Mrs. Peterson said, her voice strangely tense. The man turned, and Naomi felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. She knew him. Older now, perhaps 35 years old, gray beard at the temples, but unmistakably him. The desperate student from Alexandria, the young man whose thesis she'd saved. Except now he didn't look like a student. He looked like a prince. Dr. Naomi Carter. His voice was deeper than she remembered, more confident, but carrying the same emotion from a decade ago. The entire lobby seemed to freeze. Mrs. Peterson looked from Naomi to the man, confusion painted on her face. "I'm sorry, Sheikh Al-Hadi, but there must be some mistake. This is Naomi Carter, one of our housekeeping staff." "There's no mistake," he interrupted. Without taking his eyes off Naomi, "I would recognize her anywhere." He took the steps forward. 10 years ago, in Alexandria, when everyone told me my research was impossible, when every translator said the manuscripts were indecipherable, you spent 3 weeks working 16-hour days to decode them. You saved my thesis. You saved my career. And then you just vanished. Naomi opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "I looked for you," he continued, his voice becoming softer. "I asked your professors at Columbia. I sent emails. I even hired someone to try to track you down. But it was like you'd erased yourself from existence." Mrs. Peterson tried to intervene again. I assure you, this is just a coincidence." "It's not a coincidence," Naomi finally said, her own voice sounding strange to her ears. "I remember you. Omar." Something changed in his eyes hearing the name. A flash of mutual recognition that transcended 6 years of silence. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Please. In private." Mr. Hartley, the general manager, finally found his voice. "Sheikh Al-Hadi, I'm sure we can arrange a proper translator for you. Someone more appropriate." "I don't want a translator," Omar cut him off, authority returning to his voice. "I want to speak with Dr. Carter, privately." Naomi looked at Mrs. Peterson. whose expression had changed from confused to calculating in seconds. "Of course," Peterson said with a forced smile. "Naomi, please escort Sheikh Al-Hadi to the Sapphire conference room," and she lowered her voice. "Behave professionally." The conference room was all glass and steel, designed to intimidate. But Omar immediately dismissed his bodyguards and closed the door, leaving just him and Naomi. For a long moment, neither spoke. Naomi stood, uncomfortable in the oversized uniform, while he remained near the window, studying her. "What happened to you?" he finally asked. The question was simple. The answer was not. "My grandmother got cancer," Naomi said, her voice firmer than expected. "Stage 3. She needed treatments, care, someone with her constantly. I came back from Alexandria to help. I thought it would be temporary, but it wasn't. No, the money ran out fast. My savings, then my fellowship. I tried to keep up with my research remotely, but she paused. The academic world doesn't wait for you. My advisor stopped responding to emails. My grant applications were rejected. Doors closed, so you became a housekeeper." There was no judgment in his voice, only sadness. "I became what I needed to become to survive," Naomi corrected, "and to take care of the woman who raised me." Omar nodded slowly. "Do you still read? Still study?" "When I can. Sundays at the public library." "It's not the same." "But say something in Fulani," he suddenly interrupted. Naomi blinked, surprised. Then, hesitant, she spoke in Yidi Min Hali Elam Mulango. "What is hidden does not mean it is forgotten." Omar's eyes lit up. "Your accent is still perfect. The knowledge is still there." He pulled out a chair and sat, gesturing for her to do the same. Naomi hesitated, then sat on the edge of the chair, a decade of social hierarchies making it difficult to relax. "Naomi, I didn't come to New York by accident. I've been building something for 5 years. The Al-Hadi Institute for African Studies in Washington, D.C. were cataloging, preserving, and translating rare African manuscripts, exactly the kind of work you did in Alexandria." Naomi's heart began to beat faster. "We need a director of research, someone who understands not just the linguistics, but the cultural context. Someone brilliant enough to see patterns others miss." He leaned forward. "I want you." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I can't," Naomi said automatically. "I have my grandmother. I have responsibilities. I haven't worked in that field for 6 years. Your grandmother can come with you. We'll provide housing, health care, everything. And 6 years doesn't erase a decade of expertise." His voice became softer. "Naomi, you're wasting your gifts pushing a cleaning cart. It's honest work that didn't say it wasn't. I said you're wasting your gifts." He paused. "Why are you hiding who you are?" The question hit like an arrow. "Because no one cares who I am," Naomi said, the truth coming out more bitter than intended. "They see the uniform. They see the skin. They see the help. It doesn't matter what's in my head or what degrees I have. So I stopped trying to be seen." "I see you," Omar said simply. And in the silence that followed, Naomi realized it was true. For the first time in 6 years, someone truly saw her. The news spread through the Regal Crown Hotel like wildfire. Before Naomi even returned to the 12th floor, messages were already circulating in the housekeeper's WhatsApp group. Carmen called 3 times. Grace appeared in the hallway with wide eyes. "Is it true?" Grace asked in a low voice, looking around as if afraid of being heard. "That Arab billionaire knows you. That you're some kind of doctor." Naomi didn't get a chance to answer. Her radio crackled again. "Naomi Carter, report to Mrs. Peterson's office, immediately." Margaret Peterson's office was on the 3rd floor, a minimalist space overlooking 57th Street. Corporate trophies lined the shelves, photos of her with celebrities who'd stayed at the hotel. When Naomi entered, Peterson wasn't alone. Mr. Hartley, the general manager, sat in the leather chair, and beside him, Robert Chen, the HR director. "Sit down, Naomi," Peterson said, indicating the only empty chair. strategically positioned facing the three executives. Naomi sat, feeling like a student summoned to the principal's office. "We've just learned some interesting information about your background," Hartley began, his hands folded on the desk. "Information that wasn't included in your employment application. I provided my high school diploma and work references as required," Naomi replied calmly. "You never asked for more. You didn't think it was relevant to mention that you have a doctorate?" Chen asked, his tone accusatory. "Relevant for cleaning bathrooms?" "No, I didn't." Peterson leaned forward. "Naomi, let's be honest. You deliberately hid your qualifications. Why?" The question sounded genuine, but Naomi knew the game. "Because overqualified people don't get hired for housekeeping positions. And I needed a job." "Well, now we know," Hartley said. "And we also know that Sheikh Al-Hadi made you an offer." Silence. "We'd like to make a counteroffer," Peterson continued, her voice artificially sweetening. "We value dedicated employees. We're prepared to promote you to the guest relations department. Starting salary of $48,000, full benefits." And she paused dramatically, a signing bonus of $5,000. It was almost double what Naomi currently earned. A year ago, she would have cried with gratitude, but now, she saw it clearly for what it was, a desperate attempt at control. "What does the hotel get in return?" Naomi asked. The three exchanged quick glances. "We get a talented employee in a position that better utilizes her skills," Chen said. "Or you get to keep Sheikh Al-Hadi happy by ensuring I stay," Naomi corrected. "Because you're afraid if I leave, he might take his business elsewhere." Hartley's jaw tightened. "That's a cynical interpretation. Is it wrong?" No one answered. Peterson changed tactics, her voice becoming almost maternal. "Naomi, be realistic. You have a life here. Your grandmother is settled. You have healthcare, stability, a routine. What is this Sheikh offering? Some fantasy job in Washington that might not even materialize. And you be leaving everything behind for what? The word of a man you haven't seen in 10 years? The insinuation was clear. Don't trust him. Don't trust men like him. "I haven't made any decisions yet," Naomi said. "Good," Hartley replied quickly. "Think carefully. We'd hate to lose you, but we'd understand if you felt you needed to. Explore other options. Just remember," he leaned back in his chair, "the devil you know is often better than the devil you don't." Naomi managed to finish her shift on autopilot, changing sheets, cleaning bathrooms, vacuuming carpets, mechanical movements while her mind spun in circles. $48,000 per year. Benefits, stability versus the unknown. A promise, a chance to become who she was again. At 4 p.m., when her shift ended, she didn't go straight home. Instead, she took the subway to 42nd Street and walked to the Newark Public Library, the imposing marble building guarded by stone lions. She climbed the familiar steps to the Rose main reading room on the 3rd floor. The vast hall with nearly 52-foot ceilings, polished oak tables, and bronze chandeliers always made her feel small and, paradoxically, at home. Naomi went straight to the linguistics section. Her fingers ran along the familiar spines until she found what she was looking for. African Language Structures by William E. Welmers. She opened the book and inhaled deeply. That smell of old paper, ink, and preserved knowledge. And then she began to read. The words came back easily. The linguistic concepts she thought she'd forgotten were still there, waiting. Tonal structures, noun class systems, complex verbal morphology. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice when someone sat across from her. "I thought I might find you here." Naomi looked up. Shigomar. He was dressed more casually now. Dark jeans, white shirt without a tie. But he still carried that aura of natural authority. "How did you? You mentioned you come to the library on Sundays." "I took a chance." He gestured to the book. "May I?" Naomi handed it over. Omar flipped through the pages, a small smile touching his lips. "Welmers, a classic. You used this in Alexandria, didn't you? When you were helping me with those man language fragments, you remember that?" I remember everything about those 3 weeks. How you barely slept. How you filled 17 notebooks with annotations. How you solved in days what experts said would take years. You returned the book. The hotel made you an offer, didn't they? How did you know? Because I know how institutions work. They don't want to lose a valuable asset, especially not to someone they see as an outsider. His voice became more serious. What did they offer? $48,000, guest relations position, signing bonus. And what did I offer? $120,000, director of research, full autonomy. So financially, it's not even close. It's not about the money. Naomi said quietly, I know. It's about fear. Omar leaned forward. Fear of leaving what's safe. Fear of failing. Fear that maybe you're not who you used to be. The words hit their mark. What if I'm not? Naomi whispered. What if 6 years of cleaning hotel rooms erased what I was? What if I can't do it anymore? Omar took the book again and opened it to a random page. A section on serial verbs in Yoruba. Read this paragraph out loud. In Yoruba. Naomi hesitated, then began. Imwwl. He brought the book home. The words flowed naturally. Perfect pronunciation. Correct tones. When she finished, Omar was smiling. You didn't forget. It's still there. All of it. He closed the book. Knowledge doesn't disappear. Naomi. It just waits. It was almost 8 p.m. when Naomi finally arrived at the Harlem apartment. Her grandmother, Miriam, was in the tiny kitchen preparing jollof rice. The smell of tomatoes, peppers, and spices filling the space. You're late, Miriam said without turning from the stove. And you have that look. What look? The look of someone carrying a mountain on their back. Now she turned, studying Naomi with those sharp 78-year-old eyes that never missed anything. Sit, tell me. Naomi sat at the small Formica table and told everything. The sheet, Alexandria, the offer, the hotel, the counteroffer, the fear. When she finished, Miriam turned off the stove and sat across from her granddaughter. Let me tell you a story, she began, her Nigerian accent thickening as it always did when she spoke of the past. When I was 28 years old in Lagos, I had a good job, government office, steady pay, respect. Then the coup started, the violence, and I had to make a choice. She took Naomi's hands. Stay in what was safe and familiar but dangerous. Or risk everything to go to America, a place I'd never been, where I knew no one, where I'd have to start over completely. You chose America. I chose possibility over certainty, and it was hard. God, it was hard. I cleaned houses, worked in factories, raised your mother alone, but I built a life. And when your mother died giving birth to you, her voice cracked slightly, I raised you too. And every day, I told you, you can be anything. You can do anything. Tears were streaming down Naomi's face now. But now I'm scared, Grandma. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough anymore? Then you fail, Miriam said simply. But you fail while trying to be who you really are. Not while pretending to be invisible. She squeezed Naomi's hands tighter. For 6 years, I've watched you disappear. You hide your books like they're shameful. You speak in a small voice. You make yourself less so others feel comfortable. This is not why I came to America. This is not why I raised you. But what about you? Who will take care of you? Miriam laughed, a real laugh, full and rich. Child, I survived military dictatorship, crossed an ocean alone, buried my daughter, and raised you through every struggle. You think I can't take care of myself for a while. But no buts. Mrs. Johnson next door already said she'll check on me. The church has volunteers. And she smiled slyly. Didn't this sheik offer health care? You think I can't visit Washington? Naomi couldn't help but laugh through her tears. There's my girl, Miriam said softly. Now tell me, if money and fear weren't factors, what would you choose? The answer came without hesitation. I'd go back to who I was, who I still am. Then you already know your answer. The next morning, Naomi was called to an emergency meeting, not in Peterson's office this time, in the executive boardroom on the 35th floor. The entire management team was there. Hartley, Peterson, Chen, and 3 other executives she'd never met. They sat on one side of the long mahogany table. A single chair waited on the other side for her. "Thank you for coming, Naomi," Hartley began, his tone professional but cold. "We wanted to discuss your future with the Regal Crown. We've revised our offer." Peterson interjected, "We're now prepared to triple your current salary, create a special position for you as Cultural Liaison Coordinator. You'd work directly with our international guests. Triple." The number should have made her gasp. A year ago, it would have. "And what specifically would I do in this position?" Naomi asked. "Well," Peterson glanced at the others, "you'd serve as a cultural bridge, especially for guests from the Middle East and Africa. Translation, cultural consultation, that sort of thing. So I'd be a translator to make sure you keep wealthy clients happy." "It's an excellent opportunity," Chin said quickly. "It's a desperate attempt to keep me here because you're afraid of losing Sheikh Al-Hadi's business," Naomi said calmly. The room went silent. "Miss Carter," Hartley's voice held a warning. But Naomi was done being warned, done being silent, done being invisible. She stood up. "For 6 years, I've worked in this hotel. I arrived 30 minutes early every single day. I never called in sick. I never complained when guests were rude or when my supervisor ignored harassment." She looked at each executive in turn. "And in 6 years, how many of you knew my full name? How many knew I had a family, that I'd studied, that I had dreams?" No one answered. "I was the woman in the gray uniform, the one who cleaned your bathrooms. Invisible, silent, convenient." Peterson tried to interrupt. "Naomi, that's not fair. Let me finish." For the first time in her life, Naomi didn't lower her head. "You never cared who I was. But now that a rich man recognizes me, suddenly I have value. Suddenly I deserve triple my salary. Suddenly I'm worthy of meeting with executives." She walked toward the door, then paused. "I clean this hotel with pride. There's no shame in the work I do. But that never gave you the right to reduce me to just what I do. You never tried to know who I am." Her voice was steady, powerful. "My work doesn't limit my worth. Only your view of me does." And with that, she walked out. Behind her, she heard Peterson's voice. "If you walk out the door, don't expect to come back." Naomi didn't turn around. She kept walking. In the lobby, Shikomar was waiting. He stood as she approached. "I heard raised voices," he said carefully. "Are you all right?" Naomi looked at him, then at the hotel around her, the marble floors she'd mopped 1,000 times, the windows she'd cleaned until they sparkled, the luxury she'd maintained for 6 years while remaining invisible. "I need to ask you something," she said, "and I need the truth, of course. Is this offer real? Or am I just a nostalgia project for you? Someone you feel guilty about?" Omar met her eyes steadily. "The offer is real. The position is real. The institute is real. We've been operational for 2 years with a staff of 40. And yes, I feel gratitude toward you. But I'm not hiring you out of guilt. I'm hiring you because you're the best person for this work." He paused. "But I need to know, are you ready to stop hiding?" Naomi thought about her grandmother's words, about the books and boxes, about 6 years of making herself small, about the Yoruba paragraph she'd read perfectly yesterday. "Yes," she said, "I'm ready." Omar smiled. "Then let's go get your future back." Naomi had 1 week to close her life in Newark, 1 week to pack 6 years of invisible existence, 1 week to prepare her grandmother for the move, 1 week to say goodbye. But first, there was something she needed to do. On her second to last day at the Regal Crown Hotel, Naomi went down to the basement locker room one final time, not in gray uniform, but wearing black pants and a blue blouse, simple clothes. But her own choices. Carmen, Grace, and Yuki were there, along with 7 other housekeepers from the morning shift. "So it's really true," Carmen said, her eyes shining with tears she refused to let fall. "You're really leaving." "I'm really leaving," Naomi confirmed. To do what exactly? Grace asked. We heard rumors, but nobody knows for sure. Naomi took a deep breath. I'm going to direct a research institute in Washington. Study ancient African manuscripts, languages that are disappearing. Silence. The women stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. You're a doctor? Yuki asked softly. Real doctor? PhD? Yes. Linguistics. Columbia University and research at the Library of Alexandria. Holy shit. Grace whispered. And you've been cleaning toilets? I've been surviving, Naomi corrected. There's a difference. Carmen shook her head, laughing without humor. All this time we worked next to a genius and didn't even know. That's not your fault. Naomi said quickly. The system is designed to make people like us invisible, to make us think this is all we're capable of. She looked at each woman in the room. But I need you to know something. Each one of you is more than what you do here. Carmen, you raised 3 kids on a housekeeper's salary while sending money back to the Dominican Republic. That's not just survival. That's heroism. Carmen's hand flew to her mouth. Grace, you work 3 jobs and still find time to volunteer at your church. You're holding together an entire community. Grace's tears finally fell. Yuki, you came here at 50 years old, learned a new language, built a new life. That takes more courage than most people will ever have. Yuki bowed her head, shoulders shaking. We're all more than they see, Naomi continued, her voice strengthening. And maybe I can do something about that. She pulled out a folder from her bag. I talked to Sheikh Omar. The Al-Hadi Institute is creating a scholarship program for immigrant women whose careers were interrupted, who had to take survival jobs but never lost their dreams. She handed the folder to Carmen. It's called the Voices Recover Project, and you're looking at the application. Naomi, Carmen's voice broke. I can't save everyone, but I can start somewhere. With the women who stood beside me, who made me feel less alone. The room erupted, women hugging each other, crying, laughing. Yuki handed Naomi a small package wrapped in newspaper. From all of us, she said. Inside was a delicate scarf with African patterns. Expensive. Certainly bought with money none of them had to spare. So you never forget, Carmen explained, where you came from. And so you remember, there are hundreds of us out here. Thousands. Women carrying universes inside them that nobody bothers to see. Naomi held the scarf against her chest, tears streaming freely now. I won't forget. I promise, before leaving the hotel for the final time. Naomi did something she'd never done in 6 years. She walked through the main lobby, not scurrying along the edges, not keeping her head down. She walked straight through the center, head high, shoulders back. Mrs. Peterson was at the front desk. Their eyes met. For a moment, Peterson looked like she might say something. An apology? A threat? But she just looked away. Mr. Hartley was there too, talking to a group of suited executives. He saw Naomi and stopped mid-sentence. Miss Carter, he called out. A word. Naomi walked over, unhurried. I want you to know, Hartley said stiffly, that we wish you well in your future endeavors. The regal crown doesn't hold grudges. How generous, Naomi replied evenly. He cleared his throat. And perhaps your departure has given us some things to think about regarding how we see our employees. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. I hope so, Mr. Hartley, because there are dozens of women in your basement right now who deserve to be seen. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Hartley, that devil I didn't know. Turns out he's actually an angel who recognized what you couldn't see. And with that, Naomi Carter walked out the front doors of the Regal Crown Hotel for the last time, into the sunlight, into her future. Washington, D.C. in autumn was different from Newark, slower, greener. The Al-Hadi Institute for African Studies occupied a beautifully restored brownstone near Howard University, 3 floors of research space, climate-controlled archives, and offices overlooking tree-lined streets. Naomi's office was on the 2nd floor. Large windows, built-in bookshelves already filled with linguistic texts. A desk that was actually hers. The first morning she sat at the desk, she cried. Shikomar found her there, tears streaming down her face, hands pressed flat against the polished wood. "Are you all right?" he asked, concerned. "I forgot," she whispered. "I forgot what it felt like to have space. To have my own space where I'm allowed to think, to create, to be." He understood without her having to explain further. The work was challenging, beautiful, consuming in the best way. Naomi led a team of 5 researchers cataloging a collection of 18th century manuscripts from Timbuktu, texts that mixed Arabic, Fulfilled, and Songhay in ways that confounded traditional translation methods. But her training, that deep, intuitive understanding of how languages blended and evolved, made connections others missed. Within 3 months, they translated 17 manuscripts that had been considered impossible. Within 6 months, Naomi published her first paper in a decade, Linguistic Hybridity in West African Trade Documents, Recovering Lost Voices. It was cited 43 times in the first month alone. Her name, Dr. Naomi Carter, was back in academic circulation. But she made sure it meant something different this time. On a rainy Tuesday morning, 8 months after leaving New York, Naomi stood in front of a room of 12 women. They came from everywhere: Haiti, Somalia, Ethiopia, Dominican Republic, Guatemala, Philippines. They ranged from 28 to 56 years old. They worked as housekeepers, nannies, home health aides, kitchen staff, and every single one had an interrupted education. "Welcome," Naomi said, "to the first cohort of the Voices Recovered Fellowship." She walked to the front of the room, looking at each face. "I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I'm too old. I've forgotten too much. It's been too long." Because that's what I thought. That's what they want us to think. She pointed to herself. "I cleaned hotel rooms for 6 years. I scrubbed toilets. I emptied trash cans. And people looked through me like I was invisible. But you know what?" She smiled. "I never stopped being who I was. The knowledge was still there. The capability was still there. It was just waiting." One woman raised her hand tentatively. Esperanza, 42, former teacher from Honduras, now working as a housekeeper. "But how do we survive while studying?" "We have families, bills, full scholarships," Naomi answered, "plus a living stipend, plus childcare assistance, plus housing support if needed. Because we know you can't focus on reclaiming your career. If you're worried about feeding your children." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. "This program is different," Naomi continued. "We're not asking you to choose between survival and dreams. We're giving you both." A Somali woman named Faduma started crying silently. "Why?" she asked. "Why do this for us?" Naomi's voice was gentle but firm. "Because someone did it for me. And because the world is full of invisible women carrying extraordinary gifts. It's time we became visible again." The changes started small, then rippled outward. The Voices Recovered Fellowship graduated its first cohort, a former Haitian housekeeper, who became a public health administrator, a Colombian kitchen worker who completed her engineering degree, a Filipino caregiver who opened a community center. Esperanza, the former teacher, went back to Honduras to start a bilingual school. And Carmen, beautiful, strong Carmen, finished her social work degree at 52 years old and now ran a program for immigrant domestic workers in Queens. But perhaps the most surprising change happened at the Regal Crown Hotel itself. 2 years after Naomi left, she received a letter. "Dear Dr. Carter, I hope this letter finds you well and thriving in your work. I'm writing to inform you of some significant changes at the Regal Crown. Following your departure, management conducted a comprehensive review of our employment practices. We've implemented professional development programs for all staff, regardless of position, educational stipends for employees pursuing degrees, a diversity and inclusion committee which I now chair, fair wage audits and salary corrections, anonymous reporting systems for workplace issues. It's not perfect. We have far to go. But your words in that boardroom, my work doesn't limit my worth. Only your view of me does. They echo still. We're learning to see people, finally, with respect and gratitude. Margaret Peterson, Director of Diversity and Inclusion. Regal Crown. Naomi folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer next to the scarf. From her former colleagues. Change was slow, but it was real. On a brilliant spring morning, Dr. Naomi Carter stood at a podium in the main auditorium at Howard University. The room was packed, academics, students, journalists, and sitting in the front row. Her grandmother Miriam, now 80, and thriving in Washington's Nigerian community. Next to Miriam sat Carmen, Grace, Yuki, and 5 other women from the First Voices recovered cohort. And in the back, standing quietly, Sheikh Omar Al-Hadi. Naomi's lecture was titled, Invisible Voices. How we systematically erase half the world's knowledge. She began not with theory, but with story. 6 years ago, I was invisible. I pushed a cleaning cart through luxury hotels. I scrubbed floors. I changed sheets. And highly educated people walked past me every single day without seeing me. She paused, letting the words sink in. But here's what they didn't know. I spoke 6 languages. I had decoded manuscripts that stumped professional translators. I had published research that shaped my field. So why was I cleaning hotel rooms? Another pause. Because I made a choice that our society punishes. I chose family over career. I chose my grandmother's life over my professional ambitions. And academia, particularly for Black women, doesn't forgive the choice. She looked directly at the students, but I wasn't the only one. In that hotel basement, there was a Dominican woman who was a trained accountant in her country, a Haitian nurse, a Japanese businesswoman. All of us wasting our education on menial work, except it wasn't wasted. We were surviving. We were supporting families. We were doing what needed to be done. Her voice grew stronger. The problem wasn't us. The problem was a world that measures human value by titles and paychecks. That sees a uniform and stops looking at the person wearing it. She clicked to the next slide. Photos of her fellowship graduates. These 12 women have recovered 180 combined years of lost knowledge. That's how much we waste when we make people invisible. The applause started slowly, then built. So I'm asking you, all of you, when you see the person cleaning your office, serving your food, caring for your children, see them. Ask their name, ask their story. Because the next genius you need might be pushing a mop, standing ovation. Naomi looked at her grandmother, who was crying and smiling simultaneously. Looked at Carmen and Grace and Yuki, who were on their feet, cheering. Looked at Omar, who simply nodded, a gesture of recognition between two people who understood what it meant to truly see another person. After the lecture, as people swarmed to ask questions, a young Black woman approached shyly. Dr. Carter, I'm a graduate student here, and I just found out I'm pregnant. I was about to drop out because I thought I couldn't do both, finish my PhD and have a baby. But listening to you, you can do both, Naomi said firmly. It won't be easy. You'll need support, flexibility, and stubbornness. But you can absolutely do both. She handed the student her card. And if anyone tells you different, you send them to me. I'll have some words for them. The young woman hugged her, tears of relief flowing freely. That evening, Naomi walked through Georgetown alone, past the cafes and bookstores, toward the Potomac River. She thought about the long journey from Harlem to Alexandria, to Harlem again to Washington, about the woman she'd been, the woman she'd had to become, and the woman she was now. She pulled out her phone and looked at her last text message from Carmen. You gave us permission to take up space again. That's everything. Naomi smiled and typed back. You were always taking up space. I just helped you remember, at the river's edge. She watched the water flow, constant, persistent, carving its path no matter what stood in its way. She thought about all the Naomis in the world, women made invisible by circumstance, by prejudice, by systems designed to keep them small. Women pushing carts, changing diapers, serving food, each one carrying universes inside them. She couldn't save them all, but she'd save 12. and those 12 would help save others. And so on, and so on, ripples spreading outward, one voice recovered at a time. Naomi pulled the African patterned scarf from her bag and wrapped it around her shoulders, a reminder of where she'd been, who'd stood beside her in the invisible spaces. And then she turned back toward the city, toward her office, toward the work waiting for her. She walked with her head high, not because she'd escaped being invisible, but because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. She was never invisible. The world just refused to look. And now she was teaching the world, Tozy.